just a second, stop, look outside. Look outside quick. No, this way. Look at these two white dogs. Oh my gosh. I hope that's not on. Is that on?
It is.
Oh, stop it. Hi, I'm Claryn and Ledy from the Gourd Barn, and I just had a dog appearance outside, and I had to say hi to the dogs. So I'm here today to tell you a little bit about the humble gourd. And gourds are growing in the garden, and I actually felt like it was necessary to tell you that because when I first heard about a gourd art class, I said, what's a gourd? And so then I remembered that they were grown in a garden, and then I figured that the gourd class that I was going to sign up for might have been a recipe class. But then I walked into the gallery, and I was in Mountain Home, Arkansas, and I walked into the gallery and found gourd art. And I said, okay, this is what I want to do. I'm going to take some classes in gourd art and find out how to do it, and then I'm going to teach classes. So that's where my interest began. First of all, a little bit of history on gourds. Gourds date way back, thousands of years, and there actually have been kings and princes and probably, I can't say popes because they probably don't have jewelry, but there have been kings with jewelry buried in their gourds, and they'll be tucked under their arm like this, and years later when they discover these kings, they'll discover the king who is gone, but the gourd is still there. They last forever. They're a natural product, and unless they get smashed or something, they're going to be there forever. And the jewels would be inside the gourd, which would be a nice thing. Okay, when I started doing this, I first of all had to learn all about the gourd, and so I'm going to tell you a little bit about the gourd too. First of all, as I mentioned, they grow in the garden, and they're very heavy. Gourds belong to the class of Cucurbitae, and that also includes watermelons and squash and all the heavy things that grow in the garden that have water in them. When a gourd is green and it's still growing, it's 90% water, and so the water keeps getting bigger as the gourd grows, and as that gourd grows and it reaches its full potential, then it begins a drying process. Or when the mother plant dies and no longer gives nutrition to the gourd, then it will just the water will start leaching out through the soil, or through the edge of the gourd, through the skin. And as it leaches out through the skin, because it's passing through vegetable matter, it creates a mold. And I left one of these moldy so that I could show you what a gourd looks like before it gets cleaned. So because it's all moldy like this, there has to be a cleaning process. And it's way easier than it looks. You just soak it for, maybe 20 minutes to half an hour. And you submerge it and let it get real wet. And then you just take a kitchen scrubby like this, and you just scrub it until that stuff comes off. And then you don't have to worry about it ever showing up again as long as you get it all off. And the reason, too, that you want to make sure that everything comes off of it is because if there's any flakes on there that you missed, and then you put a stain on the outside, if you have it in an area of the house where it's dry, then if that skin piece flakes off, that mold piece flakes off, then you end up with a bald spot on your gourd. So you want to make sure that it's very well cleaned before you start doing any crafting with it. Okay, the drying time on a gourd, it usually takes anywhere between 6 months to a year and a half for a gourd to fully clean itself out. When you can pick a gourd up and you can shake it and hear the seeds, and it's light as opposed to being that really heavy watermelon type fruit, then it's ready to start crafting. So people ask me, well, do you grow gourds? Well, I've tried, and in fact I tried for 3 years. We even put in a greenhouse so that I could start the seeds and baby the seeds and get them all ready to put in the garden. Well, okay, after 3 years of babying seeds, transporting them from Florida on our travels and everything, this is what I grew. This poor, pathetic little thing that has like a little skin on it rather than having a nice, heavy skin. And so I finally just gave up because I went to wash it and my thumb went right through it. So I figured, well, that's not going to work. But I keep it around just to remind me that you just can't do it all. So yeah, we travel in the winter, and then that's when I buy my gourds. So this is one exception. This is, unfortunately, this is kind of the northern Michigan problem. Our growing season just isn't long enough for gourds. So I mentioned before, like the seed has a DNA in it, just like we do. So it tells the gourd how big it's going to be when it matures. And if it stays on the mother plant that whole time and the mother plant is still healthy, then the mother plant will keep a nutritional feed going to it, and then it will just get nice and big. And then once the mother plant dies, then all growth stops. So if the mother plant dies because of frost, they're real wimpy, they die at the first sign of frost. And so if the mother plant dies before the gourd has reached its full growth potential, then it just caves in and it's done for. Okay, now this gourd is the thickest gourd I've ever seen. And I got this in Florida. And it had these cracks on it because it had grown so much that it like outgrew its skin. It just kind of kept growing on the gourd plant. And so when the lady took it in from the fields, it had this crack on it. And so I saw this beautiful gourd. It was, oh my gosh, it must have been that tall. And it was just this beautifully shaped gourd. And then I turned it and I saw the crack on it. And the lady said, I'll give you a real good deal on that gourd. And I said, okay. So I took it home and then I just drilled underneath the crack and it released the pressure and then it stopped the crack. And then I eventually was able to craft the gourd, and I did, it was a stringed gourd. It was a gourd like this that I did, except it was a lot bigger. But this is the exception rather than the rule. But that's the difference between having a long enough growing season and not having a long enough growing season. Okay, now gourds are named for the shape that they are. Okay, this is a snake gourd. Okay, good. All right, this is an
acorn gourd. No, apple gourd.
You're right, Susan. It's an apple gourd. Good job. And now this, okay, if this was grown on a trellis, okay, this would be straight because the weight of this is where all the weight would be, where the water is. It would be called a long-handled dipper gourd. But because somebody played with it and they manipulated it, there's a certain point in its growing season where it can be manipulated, and this guy tied a knot in it. And so this is no longer a long-handled dipper gourd, it's a curly-handled dipper gourd. And this is also a curly-handled dipper gourd because it didn't grow on a trellis, but this grew on the ground. So this is the spot where it was attached to the mother plant. And as this little gourd kept getting bigger and the tail kept getting longer, it just kept pushing them away from the mother plant, where the mother plant was rooted in the ground. So as it grew, it had nowhere to go except to make this circle. And some of them are very curly and really cool. But I wanted to bring this to show you that they don't all look the same. Okay, these little gourds are called spinner gourds. And I guess that's why maybe they were used for toys at one point in history. But what I have done with them, and these aren't finished, and this guy had a little accident, he fell off and broke his little neck, but this was one of the spinner gourds. It was attached to a banana gourd, okay? And then this is two gourds on top of each other. This is just a small one, and then I attached another one to the top, so it's going to be a mouse when it gets finished. And then I have an epoxy that I put in here to join it so you can't see that it's two different gourds. It looks like one gourd. All right. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you how to cut open a gourd and what the inside of a gourd looks like. Okay, I have a saw that I use, and Susan, can you zoom in on this? The name of that is?
Gourd saw.
It's a gourd saw. Okay, so I get a lot of my stuff from a place called Welborn Gourd Farm, and that's located in Southern California. I also buy stuff from the caning shop, which also happens to be in California. That's kind of a big artsy area, and so they have a lot of things like this. Plus, it's perfect weather for growing gourds. Okay, so the first thing you do is you decide what you want the top of your gourd to look like. So I'm going to cut this out and make this into a bowl. So you take an X-Acto knife, and you just put your knife in there, and I've already got a little bit cut, so I didn't have to do the whole thing in front of the camera. But you dig in and you make a cut. And then when you've got that cut, you insert your blade, and I've already cut around to this spot. And so you just keep the platform of the saw in contact. And you cut along the line. If you don't hit the line, nobody knows because we take the line off later. So it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so this is what the inside of a gourd looks like. Okay, the seeds are all hooked on in there by this kind of pithy area. And if this was still green, then it would look like the inside of a pumpkin. Okay, and you'd have, like, if you cleaned out pumpkins, I'm sure most people have, you kind of know that it's real sloppy on the inside. Well, this is all dry. And this is how the seeds are embedded in that stuff. And so, like I said before, when you shake it and you can hear the seeds on the inside, you know that it's dry and it's ready to craft. So that's what's done there. Now, on this gourd, I like the color of this because if I'm going to dye this a certain color, I can make this a yellow gourd. Where if I had a gourd that was real dark, like this one, and if I put yellow on it, it wouldn't look yellow. It would look just kind of like a pale brown. Where this one, I could actually get a yellow color on it. Okay, so this was called a Chinese bottle gourd. So I guess you'd have to know what a Chinese bottle looked like before, Susan, if I asked you what this was called. You probably could have guessed all day and not guessed a Chinese bottle gourd. But anyway, that's what these are called. There are other gourd. The shape of this one, this is called a martin gourd because I don't know if you're familiar with purple martins, but purple martins are birds that eat insects. And purple martins happen to love gourds for their birdhouses. So a lot of times you'll go along and you'll see all these white houses hung, especially along farmsteads and stuff, because people like to use them and they like to attract the purple martins to come and eat the insects around their gardens. Well, we've tried for years now, and purple martins are real picky birds. You have to kind of be discovered. Purple martins have a little scout that lives within the community of purple martins, and the little scout goes out and they look around for suitable housing for all the little married couples that are going to be happening in the spring. So he goes out and he finds a suitable place. He goes back to the flock and he brings in little married couples and they settle into these bird houses and then they raise their family. Well, if you don't get spotted by the scout, then you don't get moved into. So we've been hanging there for a long time. We've never had a purple martin yet. But if somebody knows how I can get on their mailing list, please let me know. Okay, so once you have this gourd all carved and you're ready to start with, you decide that you want to put some kind of a design on. Okay, so I just made this very simple. Let's say that I want to put a leaf on it. Okay, you take Glad Press and Seal, seriously. You take Glad Press and Seal and you put it on maybe a picture that you would find in a coloring book. You might take an actual leaf, which I did, and lay it down and then you trace it. And then once it's traced, you put this Glad Press and Seal over the top, you press it, you trace it, and then you pull it off. That's why when people come to me and they say, you're gonna have a hard time with me because I'm not artistic. Well, I was a phys ed teacher for 30 years, okay? I don't have much artistry in me, but I can copy stuff. I can do this. So what you do is you get this leaf, okay, and you can set it on your gourd and then you press it on there, and if you don't like it there, you can just take it off and you can move it over here. So it makes it very easy to be able to craft something when you're able to move that on and off. So once it's on there and you get it all pressed on, then you wood burn, and you wood burn right through this. And then you peel off the excess and you take it away and you end up with a pattern like this. So this happens to be a birthday present for my daughter-in-law. And Mandy, I hope you're not watching this because the surprise would be gone. But this is my little trap door in the back. So I put a little baseball back there because she is a Twins fanatic and she loves baseball. And then when I was looking at beads the other day, I happened to find a little baseball bead, so that's going to go on the top. So this will be finished in a week or so, and then I will get that to Mandy for her birthday. Okay, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the gourds that are here, but first of all, I want to tell you a little bit about the use of natural things on gourds, which I really like to do. For example, this little gnome house right here. Now this little golden retriever is not natural, but he's kind of cute. But I use the seeds, these are gourd seeds on the top. And so the gourd seeds kind of make like a little roof, little shingles on top of the gnome house. And then this is a bead that I would burn some brickwork into. And then I found some doll hair. I thought it looked like smoke coming out. But you can get very creative with these things, and they're just a lot of fun. And this is all Gourd Master ink dye, and they're made for use on gourds, and you can go ahead and use them. And the beauty of these Gourd Master ink dyes, like for this one right here, because you're using an ink dye, it's a see-through thing. It's not opaque, like paint is opaque. And if I used an opaque paint on this, you wouldn't be able to see the natural beauty of the gourd. And so this, for example, is paint, and you can't see through what's on the other side. Where on the top of these are the ink dyes, and so you can see that the natural colors in there, which is why I like to use them. And then the birch trees that I have here, that's a light white that I used on there, and then I wiped it off, and then I wood burned in the tree-looking stuff that you see on the birches there. And the other little one that's next to it right here, that other little gnome house, this top is a sponge that floated ashore when I was down in Florida, and I found it, and it was really gross. It was kind of slimy. And I worked on it, and I soaked it in vinegar, and I soaked it in bleach, and then finally I just dried it, and I dried it in the shape of the roof, so it just kind of fit right on there.
Perfect.
Okay, this is called a philodendron sheet. Now, a philodendron here in Michigan is a plant, and it's usually a house plant that we have. And so when the leaves unfurl, they just unfurl and they drop off this little tiny thing, and you just think it's junk and you throw it away. Okay, well, in Florida, philodendrons are huge, and they have philodendron hedges. And so this is the part that attaches to the plant, and then this is the part that goes up straight, and this is where the leaf is. And then as the leaf unfurls, it sheds this and it drops down. So I crawl around, and Rick does too. Rick helps me with this. We crawl around underneath the philodendron hedges, and we pull these out. And then when you soak them, you can soak them and they get flexible. And then I use those for a rim treatment around the top of the gourd. And then there's one over here. There's two over here. This one is one that I lashed around the top, and then I just left it so that it would curl back up again because I like that kind of wild look. And then this one, when I put it on, I taped it, and I taped it down so that it would dry flat. And once it dries back in that position again, it never, it never will move. It'll just stay just like that. And so I like to use those, and then you can see where I came along with some jewels on there, because even though I like the natural look, I like that surprise pop of glitz a
Bling.
little bit. The bling. That's the girl in me, I guess. I like that. This is a musical instrument, and I did not make this. I bought this on a trip, but this is the type of thing that you can use in native dancing. It's a rhythm instrument. This is called the Tree of Life. You may recognize that. And I took a class and learned how to do this. And by the way, I am a card-carrying member of the American Gourd Society. And if that's not nerdy enough for you, I don't know what would be. But I also belong to the Florida Gourd Society. And I take classes every year in Florida. And it's like my happy time. It's just so much fun to go there and meet with a whole bunch of people who love gourds. And I know that sounds really crazy that you love to do this, but it's just so fun. It's like taking a craft that you like to do, and because you can make it where other people should like it too, then you can sell it, and then you can go back and you can get more gourds and make some more. So
Which
that's,
is a question about how much does a gourd cost?
if I was going to buy a raw gourd.
Yeah, just the raw
Okay,
ones.
so if I was going to go buy this, okay, I would say that this was probably about $6.
Okay.
Okay, but again, it comes to me with mold all over it and stuff, so
Right.
by the time I get it clean, a lot of times, gourds can be really tough to clean. I said before, you just wipe it off, but there's a little more involved with that. Sometimes it'll take, like, if I had my students clean them, which I did when I first started doing this, I thought, well, I'm not gonna clean their gourds for them, I'll let them clean them. It took at least 45 minutes before we could even get started on the gourd, because they had to clean them first. So cleaning them is a big part, and sometimes you can get them clean, but if you do, then you pay more than $4 or $5 a piece for them. They charge you extra for that. Susan, show this peacock gourd that's down here. I have a peacock gourd on the outside of my barn that I've had outside for 8 seasons. And the gourd is still in perfect shape because it's natural and rain and sun doesn't hurt it. But the paint job on the outside was kind of bad after I left it out there in the first year. I could see that the paint was going to start to bubble because it was in the sun. So I moved it around to the shady side of the barn, and it has been out there, like I said, for 8 years. And the tail is starting to get a little bit ratty. But the tail, here's a question and answer for you, Susan. What do you think that tail is? Okay, hearing a long silence. The tail, I can help you with
It
that.
kind of looks like it's made out of plastic, but I don't know.
The tail is what
Seaweed or
holds,
something.
it's the seed, it comes from the inside of the seed pod. That's what holds the dates on the date palm trees in Florida. So
Oh.
that's more stuff that I find laying on the ground. And what I do then, because they're all fluffy when I find them, and so what I do is I soak them overnight, and then in the morning I'll get up and I'll put something heavy on it, like a garbage can, and just to flatten it out. And then once it's flattened out, then I can paint the whole thing and make it look like a peacock tail. So that's using the natural elements. And then that one, like I said, can be mounted on the side of a house. I had a couple stop one time, and they fell in love with the peacock, and they said, oh, if only you shipped. I said, oh, I can ship stuff. And they said, well, no, we want you to ship the peacock. And I said, oh, well, I could ship the gourd, but the tail would be another thing. Because I mean, that'd call for a pretty big box, especially the one that they picked out was huge. And so I said, well, where do you live? And they said, Florida. And I said, oh, what part of Florida? And they said, the Villages. I said, we go right past the Villages on our way to when we're going to Florida. So they said, great. So they bought it, and I packed it up, and I delivered it to them in Florida. It took a little while to get it. It took a few months, but they ended up with it. So it started in Florida and then went back to Florida. Okay, this next gourd that you see right here, this has just stones lashed around the top, just stitched on the top. But the part that you can see carved out, okay, the way I did that, I painted the green, I did the butterflies, I painted the branch on there, and then I took a Dremel tool, and the part that you can see on here that's light colored with the carving in it, I took away the whole top, the whole skin of the gourd. So the white is what you find underneath it. So as you look, see how you can see the white in here? If I peeled this off, you'd see that white kind of pithy stuff in there. Okay, so the problem though was after I got that all pulled off, because I was using a Dremel tool, which is a rotary cutter, I had all these little pock marks in there. So then I had to go through and sand out all the pock marks to make it smooth before I could start doing the carving in it. But I really like the way it turned out, and I've made a couple of those. And can you take a picture of a picture?
Like, I mean, can they look at a picture of a picture? Sure.
Yeah, can you look at a picture of a picture? Okay, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that's visible or not. But that was another one that I did, and that was one of the most fun ones that I did, and I really loved it. And the lady that bought it, when she took it home, she sent me a picture of where she had it placed in her house because she loved it so much.
That's nice.
Okay, so there's another story, Susan, that I told you earlier. I hate it when people go through their stuff. Okay. Okay, this gourd right here, I found the gourd that I made that from at a resale shop, and this is what it looked like. And when I bought it, when I bought it, the girls that worked in the shop were kind of giving each other the elbow going, can you believe somebody's finally gonna buy that ugly gourd? And then finally the lady couldn't stand it anymore, and she said, what are you gonna do with that? Like, ew. And I said, well, I'm going to fix it up, and then I'm gonna bring it back to you so you can see what I've done with it. So this is what I did with it. When I took it back to her, they couldn't believe their eyes, and they were just raving on about it, and they took pictures of it and sent it to the other people that worked at the store. So that's how that ended up. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about the snake gourd. And a little boy came into my shop the other day, and he said, oh, Mama, look at the eel. I said, that's a snake. I I have sometimes, because of my phys ed background, I have to give a definition to what it is that I've created. Okay, so this is just a stringed gourd, and I just thought it looked so nice with these big things in, these big flowers in there. And this is a peacock feather, and this is going to be another peacock tail for a smaller gourd that I have at home. But this is what they look like when I find them on the ground,
I like that.
before I flatten it out. And you can see on here where all of the little date things were attached to it from the date palm. And then this is where it was attached to the tree, and then it just kind of falls out. And then enter Claryn. I pick them up and craft with them. Oh, yes, let's walk over here. Thank you, Susan. Okay, this is kind of a Southwest influence. I first heard about these. This is called a thunder gourd or a howling gourd. And I first heard about this just watching a gourd video. And that's why it's called a howling gourd or a thunder gourd, because it makes noise. And there's a drum head that I've attached here, and then when you put this real wiggly spring in there with a little weight on the end, it causes it to resonate, and that's what makes the sound. I had a third grade teacher buy one of these from my shop, and she uses that for her quiet sound. So when the kids are a little out of hand and she wants to talk to them, she just does this and they all go shh, shh, shh. So I thought that was kind of a cute story that she came back to me with. Okay, so this is a birdhouse, and a lot of people were after the Detroit Tiger logo, and I did put a little TM on here just in case that's illegal. I'm not sure. And then this is, again, a Chinese bottle gourd, if you were paying attention earlier, taking notes. And so I did the big UP and the little lower peninsula, and I put Mackinac Island on there, and because of Rick, I had to put Drummond Island on there also. So at the Gourd Barn, at the Gourd Barn, we have lots of different things. We have flowers and gardens and that kind of thing. And I also have been doing crystal sun catchers. Can I talk about that?
Yep, crystal.
Okay,
And then
crystal sun catchers. And the sun catchers, the reason I have these is they are Swarovski crystal. And the reason that I got these was because the guy who lives across the street from us down in Florida works at a chandelier factory. And his factory got the contract for the Dubai mansions when they were building these mansions over in Dubai, and they all had Swarovski crystal chandeliers. And so once they were done making those and the chandeliers got shipped out, I ended up talking to him about this, and he sold them to me by the pound. So now I do classes in these Swarovski crystal sun catchers, and they're beautiful. Some of them are, some of the bottoms of them are this big, and some of them are the balls with all the different facets on them, and they just throw beautiful prisms. The other thing that I've started doing is I cut wine bottles, and I do wine bottle wind chimes. So that's something else that can be done at the Gourd Barn.
And where's the Gourd Barn located?
Okay, the Gourd Barn is just outside of Moran. It's 14 miles from where we are right now, and you just go north and you take exit 352, and then you go through Moran, and you turn left past the post office. It's about a quarter of a mile past the post office. Turn left on Charles Moran Road, and then you take that down to the stop sign, and you take a right, and we're right there on the left. And actually, there are signs all the way along that will bring you right to my doorstep. So, oh, and I wanted to talk too about this. I didn't yet, did I? No. Okay. So because I am that nerdy member of the American Gourd Society, I get the American Gourd Society publication, and I get this 4 times a year. And inside this, there are all kinds of pictures of different gourds that people have done, so I can get some inspiration. But I also have all of these ads in here that show me where I can go ahead to stop and shop for gourds. And some of them will sell like the beads and the rim treatments, and some will sell the gourds themselves. And I have this relationship with some of the gourd growers now. I'll just call them and say, hi, this is Claryn. And they'll say, well, how are things in northern Michigan? Because you get to know these people after a while. And
then tell them who's parked out at your place right now.
well, we have entered this, this very cool program, and it's called Harvest Hosts. And a few years ago, I had somebody tell me, you guys should be a harvest host. And I said, well, what's that? And they explained it to me, and it kind of went in one ear and out the other. And then 2 weeks later, another person said the same thing to me. You should join Harvest Hosts. And so I said, okay, let me get this straight now. People just come and stay here for free, and then in return, they shop in my shop. And they said, exactly. And the only requirement is that they have to be self-contained. We don't have a pumping station or water or electricity, any kind of hookups. They just can be a self-contained, like either a big one, and it doesn't matter to us. We've actually had not tenters, but pop-up campers stay. And I said, well, you know, we don't have any facilities. And they said, we don't need any. We've got our porta pot and we're good to go. So, and that was a couple years ago. And then they actually came in the morning and asked if they could use our garden hose to take a shower. And I said, well, you can, but I have one tip for you. The first person to take the shower is going to get the hot water because it was in the sun, you know, and so they were flipping. They were going to flip to decide who got first shower. But but for the most part, it's just been a really good experience. It's really helped my business because, you know, people come and in exchange they shop in my shop, whether they get an $8 salt and pepper shaker. Oh, I have to tell you about that too. I also have opened up a garden art shop. But whether they spend $8 there or whether they spend $120 on a gourd, you know, it's just a really good situation for me. Okay, the first year when we joined, we didn't, so this is our 5th year. The first year we had 2 people because we didn't join until, I think it was maybe August or September. Then the next year we had 26, and so that was good. And the year after that it doubled and we had 52. Last year we had 100, and then this year at the end of July we had 93. And I have 8 people out there tonight, 8 different rigs out there tonight. And so it has really grown. And I've had different people tell me that the reason they're there, the reason they came was because they ran into some people at Flathead Lake in Wyoming. Is that where it is, Wyoming? Anyway, they were at Flathead Lake, and they ran into these people, and they said, well, where are you going after this? And we explained that we were going down southern Michigan, she said. And they said, oh no, you need to go through northern Michigan so that you can stop at the Gourd Barn. Seriously.
That's
and they
great.
came because they were recommended from these people in Flathead Lake, Montana. That's where it is. Is that Wyoming? It's in Montana. So anyhow, I just thought that was really kind of a cool thing.
Yeah.
And and so we get recommendations all the time. And then if you go on the Harvest Host website, you can, so let's say that you decide, I didn't mean that to be an advertisement for Harvest Host, but if you go on to Harvest Host and decide that you want to join, and you say, I'm going to go from Michigan to the Grand Canyon, then you say the route that you want to take, and then you just hit this button, and these things pop up, and they say, well, these are all the Harvest Host sites along the way. And so you just call each one and say, we're going to be there on August 23rd. Yep, we've got room, and then there you go. You stay there free for the night. A lot of them are wineries, which makes people really happy because they can just go buy a bottle of wine, which they probably would have bought anyway,
Right.
and just spend the night for free. So that's kind of how the program works, and I'm really happy to be part of it because it's really helped my business.
Yeah. Okay, so then you're gonna tell us about the salt and pepper shaker?
Okay, so, thank you.
Yeah.
So, I'm just kind of collector's the wrong word. That gives you the idea that my house has pathways through it. It's not like that. My barn, on the other hand, sometimes has pathways through it. But I like to go to auctions and flea markets and yard sales. And so when I go there, I'll find something that could be really cool with a little bit of help. So I do sanding, and then I respray paint things, and I fix them all up. And sometimes I have to add things to them or take things off, but I end up reselling them. And so that's been a real plus for me too. I found it's called the pie safe. It's about so big. And back in the old days, grandma or mom would make her pies, and then she'd put them in there to keep them away from the flies. And there was a little vent in the top and in the back that had screening over it, so the pies could cool in there and the flies wouldn't get to them. So they were called pie safes. And so I found this pie safe, and it was a mess. It was just peeling paint all over it, and it was just a mess. And I don't even remember what I paid for it. And so after I got it all fixed up, it was a lot of work, a ton of work, to get all the paint off it and get it all shiny. It was really beautiful. And so I put it in my shop. I thought, you know what, I better see what these things are worth. And I looked it up online, and they were worth a lot of money. And so when these people came through, I told them the story, and they were so happy to buy it. They bought it, boom, just right away. They said, we'll take that.
Oh my God.
So it's just, it's really fun when you can connect somebody with something that they really like.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, this has been very good. Now, there was one other thing I was gonna have you.
After we're done, I'll say, oh, I forgot to talk about this or that. But I think I've covered most of it, other than if anybody wants to come out to the Gourd barn, here is my information. And then there's a little picture of the barn on the back.
Oh, that's what I was gonna say. The award that you won for the barn.
Oh, that's a story. Okay. So in 2016, we were awarded Barn of the Year.
Yeah.
Okay, so backtrack 2 years from that. In 2014, I received a phone call from the Michigan Barn Preservation Network, and they asked if they could bring a bus of people that they would take, again, Eastern Upper Peninsula tour of barns, if they could bring a busload of people. And so I thought, how many people are seriously gonna get on a bus, ride around and look at the barns in the UP? So I thought, well, sure, come on. I figured we'd get 15 people. So this 55-passenger bus pulls into our driveway. People just flocked up. They were in the garden, they were in the shop, they were in the barn, they were back where all the butterflies are, because it was in September, and we have just a ton of butterflies because we have a lot of milkweed. And they were in my greenhouse. I mean, they were everywhere. And it was really fun. I mean, it was a great time. But 45 minutes later, boom, they're all gone. So that, wow. But as a result of that visit, we were nominated for Barn of the Year, which is very cool. And so I thought, gosh, we were just flattered. We thought, well, how nice is that, And so there are different categories for Barn of the Year. And our category would be for family and community use. Well, we have that barn dance every year. And so that was a big plus in our favor. But when they sent me the application form, I said, you've got to be kidding me. We had to supply 24 8x10 glossies, including all the architecture, and we had to get close up and personal with all the different kinds of mitered joints and all these different things. And some of the barn doesn't have nails, it has pegs. And so that was very interesting. And so we had to make sure we got that. Rick had to measure and talk about elevation. We had to research and find out when the roof was put on, because the metal roof is pretty much what saved our barn. The part of the barn where my shop is was very compromised when we got it. And we put the metal roof on it, but as you look up there, you can see that the boards, I mean, there's a gap of 3 to 5 inches between some of the boards, and that was only covered at one time with just the shingles. And so you can see why it did the damage on the inside. But anyway, we had to talk about all that. We had to research all of it. So it took weeks to do this. Then I got everything all together, and I finally got it in the mail. I think the deadline was January 3rd. Well, I'm kind of a deadline person because of all the years in yearbook. And so we got it in mid-December, and we're all good, and we're just waiting for our award. Well, we didn't hear anything. So I thought, well, gosh, I thought our barn was pretty special. I thought we'd get something. So then we get like a blue ribbon that you'd get being in a high school science fair.
Yeah.
We get this like also ran thing, and I thought, okay, well, I guess you can't win everything. And so a year went by, and we were on our way back from Florida. My cell phone rang, and so this guy says, hi, Claryn, this is Jerry Damron from the Michigan Barn Preservation Network. I said, wait. Stop right there, Jerry. I really appreciate the call, but I'm not interested in reapplying. I said that application was grueling and whine, of all the stuff we had to do. So then there's this big silence at the end of the phone. And I said, well, is there something else I can help you with? I'm thinking maybe he wants to bring another barn tour through, which was fine. And he says, well, no. I said, well, why did you call? And he said, well, I called to tell you it's a 2-year process. I said, well, what does that mean? And he said, well, it means that you won this year. And I said, oh my gosh. I was so embarrassed. I just felt so terrible. Here look, my face is red all over again. And I just said, I am so sorry. But he was very gracious, and he accepted my apology. And he said, well, we just have to do that. And now I understand, because you can't just be nominated for Barn of the Year and win. And you have to supply information for them to base their judgment on. And so they needed those pictures, they needed the research, they needed all that stuff. And so now I understand. But at the time, I was just kind of wounded, you know, because we got the blue ribbon. But anyway, it was a very nice award, and we got to go down to, I think it was down by Ludington, and they had a big dinner, and they gave us this big presentation, and we've got this big sign now that hangs on the barn. So it was really nice. Yeah.
And the other thing that you have happen in that barn is receptions or weddings.
That's a thing of the past.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, it's just because we're getting old, and I find that when I have a wedding coming up, I seriously walk around all summer with scissors in my hand. I trim things off, and I'm picking and picking, because there's a reception, or there's a wedding first, then there's like 2 or 3 hours before the reception even starts. And the people are walking around, and they're looking in the garden, they're going, weed. You know, I'm sure they don't, but you feel that way. And so you just want to make sure that everything is perfect. And the weddings that we've had out there have been absolutely beautiful. They've just been wonderful. And the brides especially have been very happy with it. And I haven't had any bridezillas. They've all been wonderful. I did look at some wedding pictures, though, that a girl posted online. And they got married in the gazebo, which we have a little gazebo, and it looks better from far away, because when you get up close, you can see that it's really old. But the pictures were beautiful. But then they took pictures on my front porch. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, my Christmas lights are still up. And they were. The Christmas lights were up, and they were still in the picture. They were in the picture that they had online.
A lot of us could say that.
So anyway, it's a great place to live out there. We love it. It's peaceful and quiet, and I love to have people come out. And so if you ever decide that you're looking for something to do, if you've got company coming, you want to come out and have a little walk around out in the peace and quiet, come out to Moran. We're there.